everyone, my name is Allie and welcome to my channel. I am so excited about today's video, mainly because it's on a topic that I don't really get to talk a lot about on my channel because obviously my channel revolves mainly around books. However, I did focus a lot of 2024 on watching new movies or watching just like any movies. It didn't have to be a movie that was released in 2024 or even in the recent past. I really just wanted to focus on watching more movies and really expanding my cinematic horizons. And I also downloaded Letterboxd and actually used it in a serious way. So I have quite a few movies to talk about, and this was something that I've been wanting to do for a while because I've never really been super into watching movies. I'm actually not that much of a TV person, and I know that obviously like TV, that's not the only way to watch a movie, but like I kind of group together with TV shows. So like I'm not a big TV show person, I'm not a big movie person. I do like going to the movie theater every once in a while. I feel like I went a lot more when I was a bit younger, like in my late teens, early 20s. But ever since, I think kind of COVID ruined this too, but like I feel like ever since my mid-20s, maybe around like 24, I just kind of stopped going to the movie theater all that often. So I just kind of like have not been able to keep up with a lot of movies that have come out in the last few years. And like award season will roll around every year and I'll be like, I have not seen any of these movies. And this year I wanted it to be a little bit different. So I'm going to talk about the movies that I watched this year. I don't have an exact number on how many movies that was, but maybe by the end we'll figure that out. So in this video I'm just going to do kind of like a very brief, not really review, but just like a brief take on every single movie that I watched, and we are going to go from January all the way to December. So starting off in January, I only watched one movie because I kind of started this off a little bit late. So on the 26th of January I saw Showing Up, which was released in 2022. This is kind of like a smaller indie film, and it really focuses on the main character, and she does a lot of pottery, and she is working on her showcase and is kind of dealing with a little bit of like a dysfunctional family. And this movie I honestly didn't really love. I think I gave it 3 stars, and for me like a 3-star movie is just kind of meh. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great. It was just kind of like middle of the road. It was fine, it was watchable, and there were moments of it that I liked, but then there were a lot of moments where I was just like, nothing's really happening. And for me, if I'm watching a movie, I really want there to be a lot of dialogue. That's kind of what I realized throughout this entire year. I really like when a movie has a lot of dialogue, and I mean a lot of dialogue. But Showing Up didn't really have very much dialogue. The main character doesn't really say a lot. It focuses a lot more on just like her existing, which isn't super interesting to me. The next movie that I watched, we get into February, and I ended up actually watching 6 movies in February. So the first one I watched was a rom-com that came out in 2024, and that is Upgraded. I ended up giving this 4 stars, and this one stars Camila Mendes from obviously Riverdale, and then also the guy from Shadow and Bone, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but this is a really cute rom-com. I actually really enjoyed this movie. It's loosely based on, or it's kind of like a loose modern retelling of Cinderella, and I love any sort of Cinderella story. I love anything that takes any sort of inspiration from Cinderella, and Upgraded was no exception. It was so funny, it was so engaging and like really fun to watch, and I love Camila Mendes. Camila Mendes, I have also seen her other movie that she did with Netflix, and I can't remember what it's called at the moment, but it's like that comedy, that sort of like satire comedy, and it was so funny, and I need to see her in like so many more movies, whether they're comedic, romantic, whatever. I need to see more of her. The second movie I watched in February was Mr. Malcolm's List. I gave this 3 stars. This is kind of a Regency romance movie. It was fine. I didn't really love it. There were moments of it that I liked, but then there were a lot of moments that I didn't like. And I feel like a lot of people who didn't like the Persuasion adaptation from Netflix have it kind of mixed up. Like, that adaptation actually wasn't that bad. It's this movie that was like not that great. It's this movie that people should have been clowning on Twitter, not the Persuasion movie. Mr. Malcolm's List is just so incredibly dry and boring, especially the main couple, the main romance. I don't like either of them. I didn't like either of them, and I especially didn't buy them together. Like, I didn't buy the relationship, I didn't buy the romance, I didn't buy any of the chemistry. It just felt like really dry between them. It didn't feel like they had any sort of real connection. And honestly, I don't know if it was like the screenplay's fault or the actor's fault or whatever, but I just was not feeling that chemistry. I actually preferred the side couple over the main couple. The main couple, I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me. These two just seem so completely different from each other in like a fundamental way, and I'm just like, how did these people even end up together? How did they even like each other? There's no connection there. So yeah, did not like Mr. Malcolm's List. The next movie I watched was Bottoms, which was released in 2023, and I gave that 4 stars. Super funny, very like irreverent, a lot of fun. I think there were some lulls within this movie where I was just like, it wasn't really working for me in some places, but for the most part, I will say I liked a lot of the performances. I liked a lot of the jokes. There were some moments in it where I'm like, okay, let's move on. I think we're kind of like drawing this out a little too long. But overall, it was a really fun movie and I really enjoyed it. The next movie that I watched was one that actually one of my mom's friends recommended to her, and so we watched it and I was not impressed. And that is Dan in Real Life, which was released in 2007, and I gave that 2 stars. This one stars Steve Carell, and there's quite a few other people in the cast that are like pretty famous. But I really did not like this movie. It was kind of like watching a train wreck happen. You could not look away, even if you wanted to. And I wanted to so badly. It was just not my cup of tea. It's about this guy, and he's kind of like a bumbling fool of a single father, and his daughters are just like menaces to society, and to him mainly. And he ends up getting into this like really weird relationship with who he finds out to be his brother's girlfriend slash fiance, and I just didn't like it. There were just, I don't know, there's something about it didn't work for me, and do not recommend this movie. And then I ended up watching The Holdovers, which is one of my favorite movies of the year. I absolutely loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. So good. It's definitely like a new, for me at least, Christmas classic, and it's so good. I feel like if you like movies that are like Dead Poets Society or Good Will Hunting, you will really like The Holdovers. It definitely has that sort of vibe, and every performance in this movie was just completely stellar. Loved it so much. And the last movie of February that I watched was Past Lives, which came out in 2023. Another 5 out of 5 stars for me. This one was just so heartbreaking to me and felt so like it hit really close to home for me, just like in things that I have experienced in my life. And so this movie definitely impacted me in a deep way. It's definitely about like misconnections, or just like lives that just do not line up at the right time for each other. And it was just so beautiful. It was incredible. I feel like I don't have to sell you on Past Lives, because like I feel like everybody loves this movie, but just know I really enjoyed it. It's so funny how when I go through this list, I'm like, I don't remember watching this movie in 2024, For some reason, it feels like it was like a whole lifetime ago. So moving on to March, the first movie that I watched in March was This Beautiful Fantastic, which was released in 2016. Ended up giving this movie a 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. It has, the main lead is from Downton Abbey, and I love her. She's iconic. I actually didn't even recognize her until like halfway through the movie. And this movie also has Jeremy Irvine and also, oh my god, what's his name from Fleabag? Oh, I can't remember his name, but he's from Fleabag. He plays the priest. It's like on the tip of my tongue. I know his name. I know his name. Andrew? Oh gosh, Andrew something. Hold on, wait, let me look it up because I know his name. I know it. Andrew Scott. See, I was correct. Andrew Scott. And there's like a few other people in this cast that are pretty famous as well. But I really enjoyed it. It's like very quirky, very whimsical, a lot of fun. A little bit sad, but ultimately pretty uplifting. The next movie that I watched was The Last Repair Shop, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I think you can kind of tell throughout the first few months of the year. I was kind of going down the list of movies that had been nominated for Oscars. And so this is another one from that list. And it's a documentary. It's pretty short. And I really did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty well done. I have a hard time rating and like reviewing documentaries because I don't really know what makes a good documentary and what makes a bad one, and so I just have a hard time kind of like deciphering what's good and what's bad about a documentary. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was engaging, and yeah, I would recommend it. The next movie I watched was Oppenheimer, which came out in 2023 and was like a big movie during award season. And I don't know if I completely agree with my rating at this moment. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but now looking back on it, I feel like I only gave it that rating because so many people love this movie. But for me personally, with my taste in movies, and I'm not saying this is like the correct opinion to have about this movie, I just thought it was too long and too boring. Very dry, wasn't super engaging. There were parts of it that I really enjoyed, and a lot of the performances were really, really good. But overall, I just felt like the entire time I was watching this movie, I wanted to be literally anywhere else. So I probably should not have rated it that high. I think I was being a little bit generous, at least in terms of like my taste in movies, which is not like a highbrow taste. Like, I'm not saying that I have like any actual good taste in movies. I just did not love this one. The next movie I ended up watching was Aftersun, which came out in 2022. This one, loved. 5 out of 5 stars. This made me sob like a freaking baby. It's so good. Very like father-daughter relationship and mental health and just like a lot of, just so many things. Like, it's so retrospective of like looking back on a moment in time where you thought it was one thing but it was actually this other thing. Aftersun was truly so incredible. Highly recommend. One of the movies, like, I feel like this one, Past Lives Holdovers, like, it's in that top part of the list where I'm just like, you need to watch these movies. The next movie I watched in March was Much Ado About Nothing. Obviously, this is a rewatch. Love this movie. One of my favorite Shakespeare plays. So good. And this is another one that has a really stacked cast. Kenneth Branagh, Emma Thompson, Denzel Washington, Keanu Reeves. So many incredible people in this cast. Everybody is giving it their 110%. It is so good. And yeah, just highly recommend it. If you've never seen it, go watch it. The last movie that I watched in March, and I believe I actually watched this on the night of my birthday, and that is 10 Things I Hate About You. 4 out of 5 stars. Love it so much. One of my favorite rom-coms. Another rewatch. And it was just so good. So I guess I didn't watch any movies in April because there's none in this section. So jumping over to May, I watched 2 movies, and the first one I watched was The Idea of You. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I actually really enjoyed this movie. And I hate to say it because I know it's really corny, I know it's silly, I know it's ridiculous, but I just loved it. Anne Hathaway can do no wrong. I love Anne Hathaway, and ever since I was a little girl, if I ever had the question of like, who's your favorite actor, I always had two answers: Anne Hathaway and Drew Barrymore. Ever since I was a little girl. I grew up loving The Princess Diaries and Ever After and Ella Enchanted and Fever Pitch and stuff like that. So those two actresses, my favorite actors of all time, still to this day. Anne Hathaway's in a movie, 5 out of 5 stars. Or at least 4 out of 5 stars. And then obviously going in with that theme, the second movie I watched in May was Ever After. A rewatch, love that movie. It's literally been my favorite movie of all time since I was very, very little. It was so good. It's so good. It still holds up. It's even better today, honestly. Like, I feel like I understand parts of that movie so much more and like on a deeper level than I did when I was like 5 years old. And then we move on to June, and the first movie I watched in June was Anyone But You, which came out in 2023. I gave this 2 stars. Glenn Powell, I love you so much. This movie is absolute booty cheeks. It is so bad. And it has nothing to do with Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell did his best. He did what he does in a rom-com and he killed it. I just didn't like any of the other performances. I didn't like the script. I didn't think it was super funny. It was really cringe, uncomfortable at times. Did not like this movie. Sydney Sweeney, honey, you're not meant for a rom-com. I'm so sorry. Truly, as someone who is like a rom-com connoisseur, like I love a rom-com, it's not your bag. It's not your bag. I'm so sorry. You just don't have the charisma for a rom-com. And some people have it, some people don't. It's not an indictment on her. She just doesn't have it. Had to do a little bit of a palate cleanse after watching that movie. I ended up going with a rewatch of The Princess Diaries, 2001. I remember being 6 years old and seeing this movie in theaters. I love The Princess Diaries so, so much. If you follow me on Goodreads, you'll see that I have a screen cap from The Princess Diaries as my icon on Goodreads. It's also on my Spotify as well. I'm pretty sure, yeah, I have it on my Spotify as well. And I love Mia Thermopolis. I love Anne Hathaway. I love this movie. I was a big Meg Cabot head when I was younger. So I've read like most of Meg Cabot's books. And I love The Princess Diaries. I love it. It's such a good movie. It really is. It's so solid. It's so funny. It's so relatable. It's fun. Love it. But then I also, the last movie in June that I watched was American Fiction, which came out in 2023. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I actually really enjoyed this. I feel like the only part that did not work for me was the ending. The ending kind of came out of left field. It didn't really make sense to me. It kind of felt really rushed. Not saying that like the movie concept didn't make sense. I just felt like it took such a huge tonal shift that it almost felt like this person had written the entire movie and then realized that they needed like another 15 minutes and wrote this part in. Or like they hired someone else to write the last 15 minutes after just telling them a very brief synopsis and not much else. So the ending didn't really connect with me, but I did like the majority of the movie where this guy, he is kind of struggling with getting his books published, and he feels like the publishing industry doesn't really want like quote-unquote normal narratives about Black people. They want more so that like struggle narrative, which is totally true. If you know anything about the publishing industry, a lot of Black authors have shared this sentiment over the years. And so he ends up writing under a pseudonym, kind of like satirizing that type of novel, and it somehow gets published and very, very popular, and he kind of has to ride with that. It's such a good movie, but yeah, the last 15-20-ish minutes of the movie, not my fave. Not my fave. Then we move on to July, which was kind of a fun month for movies for me. So the first movie I watched was St. Elmo's Fire, which came out in 1985. I'd never seen this movie before, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's really fun. I feel like this would have been a movie that I would have loved in high school. It definitely kind of has that vibe that I was really into when I was a teenager, and this movie is just a lot of fun. really interesting, very dramatic, very messy. But in 2024, I felt like the more that I watched movies from like 20 plus years ago, the more I felt a little bit disillusioned with the movies that come out today. I just love the grit of older movies. I love how real they feel. I love how dirty they feel. I love how it feels so lived in, and St. Elmo's Fire feels lived in. It feels like these are real people, like not just characters on a screen, but like real people, which I love. So yeah, highly recommend that. The next movie that I watched was Sideways, which came out in 2004. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This movie was crazy. This movie was wild. I didn't know what to expect going into it, but I grew up with my dad quoting this movie all the time. And especially after I turned 21, I got really into wine. And so whenever I would like bring home a wine and like have it at home, he would quote this movie to me. and if you know this movie, there's one specific quote that is very popular and actually really affected the wine industry when this movie came out, and it's the main character saying, "I don't want any fucking Merlot." I don't think that's like the quote word for word, but it's kind of the essence of the quote. And the amount of times I've heard that in my life is insane, especially since I've never seen this movie until 2024. So I finally watched it, and it actually takes place kind of near where I live, not like immediately where I live, but like pretty close. It takes place in Central California, wine country, and I was just like watching this movie being like, I've been there, I know exactly where this is, I know exactly where they are. And it's just so it's just so real. Like if you've never been to the places around like San Luis Obispo, Solvang, San Ynez Valley, like if you've never been here or there, I guess, you need to watch this movie and then you will know exactly what it's like. So yeah, it was really weird, but also really funny. And it was just, I don't know, there's just like some moments that I didn't love, and it wasn't like a movie that I could see myself, well, I guess I could probably see myself watching this again and again. I would definitely rewatch this movie. The next movie that I watched was actually a rewatch, and that was Breakfast at Tiffany's from 1961. Audrey Hepburn, an icon and a legend. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I love this movie. I've written essays about this movie. I actually wrote an essay about this movie for my diversity in film class, where you were supposed to take like a classic movie and a slightly more modern movie and like compare, contrast the representation in that movie. So I decided to take Breakfast at Tiffany's and Joy Luck Club and kind of talk about the evolution of Asian representation in film. And so I wrote an entire essay about that. I don't know if I still have it. I can look for it and maybe I can share it with you guys. But I really love Breakfast at Tiffany's. I love the short story, or like the novella. One of my favorite novellas of all time. It is so good. If you've never read it, I highly recommend it. If you've never seen this movie, I highly recommend it. However, there is a very racist depiction of an Asian man in this movie. So that is a tough watch and a tough part of this movie, but it is only like a tiny fraction of it. And honestly, it's so not necessary and it should have never been included in this movie. I think it's important to see the faults in the movies that you love and critique those faults. I still love Breakfast at Tiffany's, but there are a lot of issues with this movie as well. The next movie that I watched was Hitman. That one came out in 2023. I really enjoyed this movie. It was so funny. And obviously Glenn Powell. Love Glenn Powell. I know a lot of people like don't really love him and don't really like buy into him, but for me, I've liked every movie of his that I've seen, and Hitman was no exception. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was so funny and it was just really well executed. I didn't really go into this movie with any expectations, but I ended up loving it. The next movie I watched was Twisters. This came out last year, obviously. I saw it in the movie theater and I initially gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I kind of want to give it 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know. That might be me being biased, but I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's so fun. And Glen Powell. Glen Powell, obviously. And this is a kind of companion movie to the original Twister movie. So it kind of feels like it's meant to be its own thing within the same universe. Really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. It's such a fun movie. And I'm not really like a disaster movie kind of person, but this one really, really worked for me. Love Daisy Edgar Jones. She is an icon. Truly an icon. So then we move on to August, and the first movie I watched in August was A Secret Love. This is a documentary. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It follows these 2 older ladies. They are elderly at this point, and they were part of the Women's All-American Baseball League. I believe that's the name of the organization, right? I can't remember. It's been a while since I've watched A League of Their Own, but I believe it's the All-American Women's Baseball League. I could be wrong. And they were in the closet for many, many years, but now they are out and they have been in a relationship, and it was a really, really interesting film to watch. Really, really enjoyed it. If you are queer, or if you like baseball, or you're both, highly recommend this movie. The second movie I watched in August was another documentary. This is Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars as well. Really, really intriguing. I didn't know anything about Hedy Lamarr going into this movie, and I felt like it really gave me a full-on primer about who she was and what her life was like. So another documentary that I highly recommend. And then the last movie I watched in August was the original Parent Trap from 1961. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I had never seen this movie before. I had grown up watching the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap movie. Really loved it. One of my favorite movies as a kid. And so I was just like trying to find a movie to watch that day, and I was like, you know what, I've never seen the original Parent Trap. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I thought it was so funny, and I love the parents in this movie. They're just hilarious and so much more like rough around the edges than the parents in the Lindsay Lohan version. And yeah, this movie is just too good. If you have never seen it before but you like the newer Parent Trap, highly recommend you check it out. Like, it is worth watching. Then we get to September. I watched so many movies in September. I watched 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 movies in September. This is just wild. So I started off with Dead Poets Society from 1989. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. It was so good and just so emotionally moving, and I love the way that these students go from not really caring about academics, not really caring about what they're learning in school, and then by the end of the movie they do genuinely care because of this incredible teacher. And I love narratives like that, of like an incredible teacher comes in and changes the lives of their students. It works for me every time. Truly, it works for me every time. I love it. I've had so many incredible teachers in my life, and I've been so incredibly lucky to have those amazing teachers. And so when I see narratives like this, I think of myself and like how lucky I have been to have teachers that have changed my life. So yeah, I feel like I don't even really have to recommend this movie. It's just so good. We all know it's so good. The next movie I watched for the first time was Dazed and Confused. That's from 1993. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. And it was fun, it was engaging, it was entertaining, but is it my like new favorite movie? No. Another one of those kind of like stacked casts, and it was just a fun time. It was entertaining, not really much to say about it. Didn't really feel like there was a lot of substance, but like I said, a fun movie. The next movie was a rewatch, and I ended up going with Stuck in Love from 2012. This is a movie that I loved when I was like 17 or 18. And you know what? I still love it to this day. I still really enjoy this movie. If you've somehow never seen it, I highly recommend that you check it out. The next movie I watched was Anatomy of a Fall. That was from 2023. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really well done and a really interesting look into the legal system of a different country. Highly recommend this movie if you've never seen it before. The next one I watched is one I do not recommend, and that is Autumn in New York. This one stars Winona Ryder, and it is emotionally devastating in a way that seems gratuitous. I'm like, this was not necessary. And it's also just a ridiculous story made in a ridiculous way. The only real redeeming quality of this movie, okay, there's 2 redeeming qualities. One is that Winona Ryder is in this movie, and the other quality is that it's beautifully shot. Like, it's just a gorgeous movie to look at. Otherwise, everything else, thumbs down. Thumbs down. Did not like Autumn in New York. Just do not recommend it. Don't even bother watching it. Honestly, just look up stills from this movie, because it is a beautiful movie. I just didn't like it. The next movie I ended up watching was Rain Man from 1989, or 1988, sorry. I couldn't read for a second. I had never seen Rain Man before, but I had heard it kind of, you know, mentioned within the culture, within the, you know, overall pop culture. You hear references to Rain Man all the time. And as somebody who is autistic, I was just like very intrigued to see what this movie would be like, because I've heard some criticism about this movie from other autistic people, or just like even people who don't have autism will critique this movie, and I'm just like, well, I want to know what they're critiquing. I want to know what, you know, the whole hullabaloo is about this movie. And so I ended up watching it, and I have a lot of conflicting feelings about this movie, because there are glimpses of myself in this movie that I'm like, well, I can relate to some of the aspects of that character, and I don't know how to feel about this movie, honestly. Because after I watched this movie, I did do a little bit of research, kind of like trying to see the different viewpoints of people, and honestly, it seems kind of split, especially within the autistic community, of like if you like this movie or if you don't like this movie. And I think it's just like a lot of conflicting emotions, but I will say that I think that this movie was really well executed, and I think it's intriguing. I would love to read more about it, or like hear more opinions about it, but I will say that I did not hate it. So yeah, this isn't really one that I could totally recommend watching, but I feel like if you are also autistic, I would love to hear your opinions on this movie if you've ever seen it. The next movie that I ended up watching was Bringing Up Baby from 1938, and this one stars Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, and this is kind of like a rom-com before like the rom-com was ever truly created. This is like the original rom-com, and I loved it so much. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was so funny, and I loved the dynamic between these 2 main characters. Cary Grant plays this very like stuffy, very serious researcher. I believe that he's like a paleontologist. And then Katharine Hepburn plays this kind of like, I believe that she's on the rich side. She's some sort, I don't know if she's like an heiress or some sort of rich person. And she is also kind of like very funny, very crazy, wild child, gets into a lot of mishaps, gets into a lot of trouble, makes a mess, and really just gets on Cary Grant's character's nerves and gets under his skin. And I love this dynamic of like super buttoned up and then very wild, and it just works so well, and their chemistry was beautiful. This movie was so funny. I had no idea what this movie was about before going into it. I had heard about this movie so many times throughout my life, especially being someone who loved watching TCM. I love older movies, and so I'd always been very intrigued to watch it. And then I didn't even realize that this is about 2 people trying to wrangle and take care of a tiger. It's too crazy, too funny, but I loved it. It's so funny. Highly recommend it. The next movie that I watched in September was Cabaret from 1972. This movie, one of the best movies of all time. It was incredible. It made me think. It was so timely for right now. I feel like if you are living right now, you need to be watching Cabaret. It's here. We are living Cabaret. Oh, I just loved it. And this was the kind of movie where I was watching it and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine, actually. I'm emotionally fine. And then the credits start to roll and every emotion just came out of me. It was just like a waterfall of tears. I was just blown away by Cabaret. It was so good. If you watch any of the movies, honestly, if you watch any of these movies that I talk about in this video, make it Cabaret. It is so good. I can't overstate how good Cabaret is. Liza Minnelli, incredible. An icon and a legend. And yeah, it's very timely, so I highly recommend pick it up as soon as possible. The next movie that I watched was Moonstruck from 1987. This one stars Cher. Love Cher. And this is kind of a rom-com and very short. It's a really short movie, but a lot of stuff happens and it's just kind of like a lot of messy people, all part of a messy family, and they all kind of get into shenanigans, but it works out in the end. Everybody, you know, still a family, and I really loved it. I thought it was so charming and so sweet, but also a little bit on like the steamy side, and it was just so much fun. I had such a good time watching it, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. I just highly recommend checking it out. Just watch it. Just watch it. You might really enjoy it. And then the last movie I watched in September was Meet the Robinsons from 2007. I had never seen this movie before, but I find myself thinking about this movie way more than I ever thought I would. I don't know why. Like, there's just something about it that I really enjoyed. Even though I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, I will say one of those stars was because the animation, even for that time in 2007, looked terrible. That animation was bad. I've seen plenty of other movies from like the early 2000s where the animation was not nearly as bad. That's insane. It's kind of insane. Why is Meet the Robinsons, why does it have such bad animation? For being such a futuristic kind of movie, you would think that the animation would be better. But I will say, soundtrack, incredible. I really love the story. I thought it was really intriguing, and it made me be like, what's going on? In a good way. Like a what's going on? I was like, this kid? Who is this kid? This movie, the story is very layered. If you've ever seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. I was confused, but it all worked out and I really enjoyed it. Also, I feel like if you were a fan of Jimmy Neutron back in the day, you would love Meet the Robinsons. Anyway, going into October, the first movie I watched for the very first time, I actually had seen parts of this movie, but I'd never seen the whole thing, and that was Gigi from 1958. This is a movie musical. I really love Gigi. I got really into the musical when it was revived, I believe in 2016, 2017, 2015. I can't remember. I can never remember if it's like 2015 to 2017. Anyway, it starred Vanessa Hudgens, and so I got really into this musical. I've listened to it every single day on my way to work. I loved this movie so much. I think I actually watched this movie quite a few times in 2024. I just didn't log every single time I rewatched it because it was too many times. It was too many times. This one, a little problematic, but very fun. Very fun. Don't think too hard about it. Just don't think too hard about this movie. And if you do want to think a little bit harder, just go ahead and watch the recording, like, you know, the questionable recordings, like the slime tutorials of the Vanessa Hudgens Gigi. You might like it a little bit more. The next movie that I watched was Fantastic Mr. Fox from 2009. This is a stop motion animated movie. I don't typically like stop motion animation, but I tried not to hold it against it. And at the beginning I did really enjoy it, but I felt like as I got to the end, just wasn't for me. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was fine, but it just didn't really do anything for me on like an emotional level. The next movie that I watched was Ready or Not from 2019. This is like a comedic horror movie. I loved it. 4 out of 5 stars. It was so fun, so exciting. I'm not typically a horror movie fan, but this one was like the perfect note for me, the perfect wavelength. I loved it. Definitely a movie I could see myself watching every year in October. It was so good. The next one I watched was not good. That was First Daughter from 2004. This movie sucked balls. This movie was bad. A rom-com sort of thing. It's so funny because I'd seen so many clips of it on like TikTok or Twitter, and I was so intrigued. I'm like, ooh, this movie looks like one I'd really enjoy. It has that very viral, famous clip of the main character getting into the unmarked vehicle and she's being saved from some like situation. She is the president's first daughter. Obviously she has like Secret Service, and so she's getting whisked away, and she gets into the car and she's like telling her boyfriend, come on, and he, God, what does he say, like Lucky Charm is whatever secured, and she realizes that her boyfriend from college is actually part of the Secret Service and he was lying this entire time. And so I was convinced from that clip to watch this movie, but oh my God, this movie not good. This movie not good. The next movie is another one I also didn't really like, and that is Rye Lane from 2023. This is a rom-com. It's British. It follows these two people, very different types of people, but honestly it just did not work for me. I gave it 3.5 stars, but I don't know if I stand by that rating. So I don't know. It's like very quirky, but not in a way that I enjoyed. I found it to be a little bit annoying, especially the main female character, but also the main male character was kind of a bumbling fool as well. And so it just didn't work for me. I really wanted it to work because I really liked the trailer, but I felt like the trailer took all of the best moments and then the movie was just the rest, and it wasn't very good. The next movie I ended up watching was Get Out from 2017. This was the first time I'd ever seen Get Out. Like I said, I'm not a horror person. I don't like horror movies, but I loved Get Out. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was incredible. I probably should have given it 5 stars. It was so good. And Jordan Peele, an icon and a legend. So talented. This movie just blew my mind. It was so good. Then I watched Challengers from 2024. I gave it 4 stars. Zendaya, love Zendaya so much. She's iconic. This movie was so much fun. I had a really good time. I felt like it was really well paced, even if the pacing was a little bit weird. I felt like it worked for the movie. The next one I watched was a documentary from 2024 that was Daughters, and you can find this on Netflix. This was 4.5 stars for me. Really, really good. It follows these incarcerated men, and they are having like a father-daughter day, and it also follows their daughters and just kind of like their relationship to their fathers who they haven't seen for some of them in years. And it was really moving and really emotional and also really beautifully executed. So highly recommend this one. Then I watched one of my favorite movies of 2024, and that is His Three Daughters. This one came out in 2023 and it is so good, so emotional. It follows these 3 women. They are all kind of like in different walks of life. They're all very different people, but they all are sisters, and their father is dying, and they all have to kind of come together despite their differences and be a family. and it's so beautiful. If you like the book Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors, highly recommend this movie. You're gonna love it. The next movie I watched was Mystic Pizza from 1988. This one was a really great movie. Another one of those like older movies that I feel like is so lived in and so gritty and so just beautifully executed. Such a fun movie. If you've ever been in like the New England area, you're gonna really love this movie. Now, having visited the New England area, I was like, this movie, fantastic, so good. I feel like I have so many more movies to talk about. Let's do a little bit more of like a rapid fire. I watched Us in 2019, gave it 4 stars, really enjoyed this one. Not quite as much as Get Out, but it was still good. Then I watched Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy from 2004, gave it 2 stars. It was funny, it had its moments, but it wasn't a perfect movie by any means. And I really only watched it because I wanted to know where the Stay Classy San Diego came from. And now I found out. Then I watched The Prince and Me from 2004, gave this 2 stars. Booty cheeks of a movie. Truly garbage movie, not worth your time. Then I watched Kinds of Kindness from 2024, gave it 2 stars, another booty cheeks movie. Did not like this one. There were moments of it that I liked. I think one of the stories was like kind of interesting, but overall did not like the execution. I just don't think I like this director. We'll see, maybe I'll watch another one of his movies, but overall, not my cup of tea. Then I watched The Haunted Mansion from 2003. That movie is a fucking classic. I don't care what anybody says. That movie is iconic. 5 out of 5 stars. One of my favorite movies of all time. It is so good. You can hate me for that opinion, but honestly, I don't care. Haunted Mansion is the GOAT. It just is. Then I watched We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This is an adaptation of one of my favorite books from 2024. And I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It was just fine. Then I ended up watching Conclave in the movie theater, and I really loved it. 4.5 stars out of 5. I can blame my friend Olivia for this movie recommendation, and I'm so glad I listened to her because this movie was great. Such a good time. Highly recommend checking it out, especially before award season. Then I ended up watching Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is from 2004. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Another one that if you've ever been to Long Island, highly recommend it. And also if you love the new Ariana Grande album, Eternal Sunshine, watch this movie. You might enjoy it. The last movie I watched in October was The Worst Person in the World from 2021. Gave this 2 out of 5 stars. There were moments of this movie that I liked, but overall, truly insufferable. A truly insufferable movie. I did not like it. Then we moved to November and I watched The Family Stone from 2005. 1 star. 1 star. Terrible movie. No redeeming qualities. Bad movie. The second movie I watched in November was Good Will Hunting. This is from 1997. 5 out of 5 stars. Incredible movie. Incredible movie. One of my favorites. If you've ever been to Boston, you need to see this movie. This is Boston. Truly, it's Boston. I love this movie, and I love Boston. And then the last movie I watched in November was Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, another booty cheeks movie. 1 star. 1 star. Terrible movie. Horrible movie. The people who made this movie, if they were still alive, should be executed. I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I don't mean that. But it was a bad movie. And then we finally get to December. Thank God. I watched 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 movies in December. Why did I do this monthly? I don't know. I don't know. But we're here now. So the first movie I watched was actually one that I watched in the theaters. Obviously, it's Wicked. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. The half star is for Ariana Grande. No, I liked Ariana Grande in this movie. I just like to give her shit. I've been a fan of hers since I was like 16 years old in high school. So I feel like I'm allowed to give her shit. I've been a fan of hers for like ever. But really the half star is actually for John M. Chu. I did not like his direction. I didn't like the choices that he made creatively. I didn't like the set. I didn't like the lighting. There were shots in this movie that I just like was like, why are you doing this? It just doesn't make sense. Not that I'm like some cinematic genius or anything like that, but there were just some shots that were set up very strangely. Then I ended up watching The Shop Around the Corner from 1940. This movie has inspired quite a few other rom-coms, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I think that this one was good, and it definitely gave me more of an appreciation for movies like In the Good Old Summertime or You've Got Mail, but ultimately not my favorite iteration of this trope of like 2 pen pals who don't know each other but do know each other in real life, don't realize that they're pen pals, but they hate each other in real life. But then they end up going through a romance and it works out. Then I ended up watching 2 documentaries, Brandy Hellville and The Cult of Fast Fashion, and then Bama Rush. Both of those documentaries were bad. They were poorly executed, didn't really have a direction, didn't really have a focus, didn't work for me. Then I rewatched Bridget Jones's Diary from 2001, and I gave this 3.5 stars out of 5. A really fun rom-com. Highly recommend it. Renee Zellweger is incredible, and the first time I watched this movie, I did not even realize that she's American. I had no idea. I thought at most she was maybe Australian. I had no idea that she's like legitimately American from like America. Then of course I had to watch 2 different versions of Little Women. I watched the 1949 version, then I watched the 1994 version. Love the 1994 version, it's the best one. If I have to rank them all, 1994 is at the top, 2019 is at the bottom. You can figure out the rest from there. And then I rewatched Fever Pitch, which another one of the Drew Barrymore movies that I love, and 4.5 stars. Love it. It's iconic. It's a rom-com. It's based around baseball. So good. Jimmy Fallon, who I typically don't love, is actually pretty great in this movie. And then the very last movie that I watched in 2024 was a documentary called Satan Wants You. This is from 2023. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was really interesting. It talks a lot about the Satanic Panic, and if you are intrigued by that topic, I highly recommend checking this documentary out. It was fine. It wasn't like the best documentary I've ever seen, but it did its job. Oh my god, that was so many movies. Should we count how many movies I watched in 2024? Okay, we'll do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66.
67 movies in 2024. That's incredible. 67 movies. I don't even know how that's possible. That's crazy because I read like 78 books in 2024. If I wasn't reading a book, I was watching a movie, clearly. I watched so many movies. I don't know how I did it. I feel like I'm almost burned out on movies at this point, but I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad I did this because honestly, it made me think about movies in a different way than I typically do. And I don't know if it made me more critical of movies. I feel like it kind of did. And you could probably tell from like the ratings that I started giving movies from like the beginning compared to the end. I don't know if any of you caught that. So maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I feel like I did kind of start to get a little bit more critical. But yeah, I had such a fun time watching all of those movies, and I'm so glad I got to talk about them all with you guys today. If you have any movie recommendations, definitely let me know. Leave them down below. I would love to watch some more movies. I have a subscription to most of the streaming sites, Netflix, Hulu, Prime, Max, stuff like that. I have Canopy, so definitely let me know any movies I can find on those streaming sites. And yeah, if you saw any of the movies that I saw in 2024, let me know your thoughts down below as well. And if you were able to make it to the end of this movie, give me the film reel emoji, or like the video camera emoji, you know what I mean? I'm gonna put it right here, of like that's what it looks like. Leave this emoji down below in the comments. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and also go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.